In this video, I want to talk about scope in JavaScript as it relates to functions. Now, you've already explored scope as it relates to if statements. We messed around with that in the basics directory. Here we have scope.js. We learned that in JavaScript, we have a lexical scoping. We have a single global scope with multiple local scopes. And we learned that one way to create a new local scope is via the if statement. So variables defined in the if statement are only accessible in there. They're not accessible outside of there. And we explored how we can create a little visualization of just this. Now we're going to take the same rules and apply them to functions. So what I want to do is just create a new file in the functions directory. I'm going to call this one function-scope.js. And what we're going to do is copy and paste a function that we've already created. In Functions 101, we created convert Fahrenheit to Celsius for the challenge. Now your name might be slightly different since it was a challenge. I'm going to go ahead though and take all of the code down here, copy it to the clipboard, and paste it into function scope. And we'll use this to explore how scope works with functions in JavaScript. So let's go ahead and create a little scope tree to visualize the scope we have for this file. First up, we got our global scope, which we always have, global scope, and we have a few different things in the global scope. I have convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. After that one, I have temp1, and I also have temp2. Now inside of that global scope, we have a single local scope. Our functions define a new local scope. This scope contains everything created in the code block, so that would include the Celsius variable, but it also includes the function arguments. So in this case, we would have a local scope. This local scope would have Fahrenheit, which is the function argument, and it would have Celsius, something defined in the function itself. This means that we can't access Fahrenheit or Celsius outside of the function even after it runs. So right here, I cannot access Fahrenheit, I cannot access Celsius. They are not in scope. All I can access at this point would be convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, temp1 or temp2. So this is the exact same thing we saw with if statements. The scope tree gets generated in much the same way. We just have a function as opposed to an if statement. And the only difference that you really need to remember is that yes, the arguments of a function are also bound to that local scope, even though they're not defined inside of the curly braces. Now we could add one more thing to this example to make it a bit more real world. Let's say inside of the function, I want to add an if statement. If, and I want to check if Celsius is less than or equal to 0, which is the freezing point in Celsius. If it is less than or equal to 0, I could say let is freezing equal true. Now in this example, what's the scope tree look like? Well, we have a new local scope in our existing local scope. So I'm going to indent local scope. And what do we have in that local scope? We have a single thing is freezing. So for this example, we would have the following scope tree. Inside of this if block, we can access everything because we are either accessing is freezing or we're accessing something from one of the parents. That means I can access Fahrenheit and Celsius. I can access our convert function temp1 and temp2. So functions function much the same way as if statements when it comes to scope in JavaScript. Just because I create something in a function doesn't mean it's accessible outside of a function. And we're going to explore more situations where this actually comes up. For now, you just need to keep this in mind, that functions create a local scope much like if statements do, and function arguments are bound to that newly created local scope. And we got a little tree right here to prove it. All right, that's it for this video. Not a whole lot to discuss. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that functions created a new scope. We're going to continue on and get back to programming in the next one. I'm excited to get to it, so I'll see you then.